Hello, world. This is episode 92, and our main focus here is going to be the Dad Olympics, 15 June. I got Bobby, Jai, Mark, and of course, Big Will's in the house. Well, not so big, but what are we talking about? What's Dad Olympics, what the foundation is. But first, before you go into that, I got to make sure Mark introduces himself because I don't want to mess up his name, his last name, and what he does. So,
thank you. My name is Mark Rodriguez. I am a local city councilman here for Sierra Vista. I'm a retired military guy. That's how I ended up here in this area. I still work on Fort Huachuca. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a little bit of everything. So that's a little bit about me.
Heck yeah.
We've had Jai on here too, but you may as well just do it formally. So because your phone's not going off and everything else.
This time everything is silent, but they won't hear nothing. My name is Jai. I run Rocha Planning and Promotions. I do a lot of local community events in Sierra Vista. The biggest part is trying to create events that help reinforce that family structure, which brings us into the Dad Olympics. I mean, this is about dads. This is about dads bonding with family, coming together and basically having like a field day where they're playing with their kids and they're playing with their family as a whole, their spouses, everything. And throughout the day, they're just earning points based upon their family system. And we take it all the way down to the end, and then we get them into the finals, and we take a bunch of dads and make them go head to head against each other and see who takes home the crown to be the Sierra Vista's #1 dad Olympian. Now, it doesn't mean you're the best dad in Sierra Vista. It just means you won the Dad Olympics.
for that day. Come on, now don't take it away. Don't take that title away.
You get one of these bright shiny little medals to carry home with you.
But you got to earn it though. We're not going to give it away.
Yeah, that's right. You got to earn it.
I had mine made for me.
You're just warming it up.
Yeah, I just kind of hold it down for a little while.
Hey, so I think a big question is like, what made you decide? Like, one thing's to have the idea, like, hey, it'd be cool to have an event and everything else. But like, what was the driving force moving forward to being able to do Dad Olympics #1?
So, really, in the first year of Dad Olympics, this is the third year. My son was almost 3 years old, I think, and I just started realizing it kind of came to my head when he was about 2, and I saw this like corny like post on Facebook that showed like a Father's Day party, and everybody was gathered around a pool, and they were all dressed for the 80s, like 80s dads. Even the moms dressed up like 80s dads with like the fanny packs. Nice. It's kind of funny, and I tried to convince my friends to do it with me. And then I don't have cool enough friends to do that, I guess, because none of them wanted to do it with me. So I was like, let's create an event out of it. But I also was getting kind of frustrated over the fact of like all the stuff that surrounds Father's Day weekend. There's so much stuff going on that week, whether it's a new holiday or here in Sierra Vista, it's Gay Pride in Bisbee, Yeah. Huge event that's happening down there. Nothing against it, but at the same time, what about dad? What about the essential format of the God-fearing family? What about dad? What about mom? What about the kids? And what about just an environment where they all feel welcomed?
Well, I think you said right there, you hit it. Why all this stuff is because it's taken away from the God-fearing part of it element, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, they're just not scared no more.
Yeah.
And what gets lost in the mix, right, is, based on what we've been seeing is, we're a little older generation here that we're kind of more of what they call traditional or old school. But looking at stats, right, through tradition, everything else, is that almost 93% of families are saved when the father comes to Jesus, right? And then, of course, the number just drops to almost nothing when the wife comes to Jesus. It's like 17% change. And then when the children come first, it's almost like at the bottom of the bucket of 3.5%. So for the rest of the family to come in. So to reestablish the fatherhead of the family is very, very important. We lose those things that we need, that's essential, and we know, right, as most of us are veterans, that we know fathers, sons haven't made it back, right? Mm-hmm. And they miss out the opportunities of watching their child grow up.
Oh, yeah.
For the graduation, for high school, the marriage, the college, the children, the grandchildren's, and that's important. Some come back physically, but then finally lose the battle, right? because we have that high suicide rate that's going on also. In June, it's like you said, 15 June is Father's Day, and we're losing that battle. We're losing that ground. And based on how we are faith-based, where I am at, right, is to reestablish that hold for our fathers to stand their ground, right? And that's important. And sometimes we forget the importance of that. And then we go into looking at what we're supposed to do, right? Even as men, right? Come to Jesus in a sense of as a child. And if we come to Jesus as children, then we love each other even more, right? Because we look at our children today. Mm-hmm. They don't see color. They don't see sex. They see that's my best friend. We look alike. Yeah. What do you mean you look alike? Right? Do you realize you guys are, 3 feet difference in height because you're 6 years old and you're 6'2" and you're almost 6'2" yourself? But that's what they see. They see the purity, the innocence of a child, that we should do the same thing among grown people. But that is where the problem lies.
Yeah, it is. And I think, see, the kids don't get to see their dads being authentic.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's there's like this hit on where guys have to be over machismo, right? Where it's like, hey, you know what?
The bravo.
Yeah. Yeah. The bravado. Yeah. They have to. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so then you have kids that don't ever get to see that. Right. And so I think that's why with Dan Olympics, I do think that's good, because it's like,
I think there's another aspect where it's not even just the bravo or the machismo. There's so many dads and hardworking dads that I know out there that are just working constantly and trying to provide for them. And then when they get home, it's so hard to turn off work. Yeah. And so they're physically present, but they are trying to find a way to like mentally be present when they're dealing with the stress of like what's going on at work. Maybe something didn't go the way that it was planned. Maybe there's some anxiety to it. Finances, all of that, And so they're there and they're present and they're trying to genuinely be present, but their brain is somewhere else, and it's hard to kind of shut stuff off like that.
Bro, that's the amount of times that my wife has told me, like, you're here, but you're not here. And I'm like,
yeah. Oh, okay. So how do you do it, Mark? Well, with all the activities that you do, you're a councilman and everything else, but I know there's more layers to you.
He's definitely an Olympic dad.
There is. Yeah, my day is sometimes they start off very early and end very late, but I try to as much as possible keep that you always hear that cliche term, that work-life balance thing, and it's very hard to do. But I always an important thing I've always held myself to is I want to keep those promises that I make when it comes to my kids. It's so important for us to keep those promises, because at their age, whatever age your kids are, those little promises are very, very big in there, and they'll never forget those things. And sometimes they'll definitely remind you throughout your years as a dad is, hey, remember you promised this or you said this, and if that didn't happen or you didn't come through with it, it kind of it takes a toll on them. So I've always tried to make whatever effort I can to make sure I'm there for them when they need me. So they know, hey, Dad. They know I'm the first thing they ask me when they message me, hey, Dad, are you busy? Always, it's the first thing. Hey, Dad, are you busy right now? Because it's never just the way my life is. It's never well, Dad's just at home, sitting there. No, they know that I'm doing something at one of my jobs, So that's the first question. Hey, Dad, are you busy? And so then once I see the message, whether it's on my phone or Facebook or whatever I can, at the time I see, okay, hey, yes, I'm at work, or what is it that you guys need, or what's going on, and sometimes it's just very simple, like, hey, I want to remind you about this, or I have a game tomorrow, or hey, I need cleats, or hey, I need this, sports fee, or I need this, whatever. And I tell them, okay, look, here's what I'm doing. I'm working until this time. I'll meet you at this time, or, I'll take a break and, I'll handle that for you, or, whatever it is that we have coming up. So, and I just try to make sure I always keep those promises, and be there, and they know that I'm there, for them. And it's, and it gets more difficult in the teen years, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
Because as much as you want to be there and you want to, but they're like, well, Dad's not cool no more. Hey, on a barbecue and stuff like that. Oh, that's cool, Dad, but I'm going to go hang out with my friends. Like, oh, man, okay, cool. So it's, and I've, having 3 kids of my own, and then 3 of, my stepkids, you get to see all that, and it's good. I love it because, we're getting to that point now where they're almost all moving out, and that's, man, that empty nester almost phase is, we have those days now where there's nobody in. It's just so quiet. Like, I feel like I should be somewhere right now.
Some places missing,
Somebody should be knocking on our door.
Yeah.
You know, did I miss a practice or a game? It's just it's weird, but yeah, it's just kind of how I handle it. I have a schedule. I have multiple schedules, unfortunately, but I try to sync them all up, and I try to make sure that I'm accessible. Is the other thing, is just being accessible. And I work in a building on Fort Huachuca where if I'm in the classroom, there's no phone. We can't have electronics in there, things like that. So my kids know that. So if they'll message me, and then I'll get to it, or I'll go check my phone in my truck, and I'll have some messages from them, and I'll try to get right back to them as soon as possible. And they understand that. When they were younger, it was a little bit different. Being there's an age gap there between my older daughter and my twin. So my older daughter, the one in the Marines now, she had military dad her whole life. She had military dad, and like I said earlier, sometimes it's hard to turn that off. And looking back now, I was a different dad than I am now, having that military mindset, and you get home and it's hard to get out of that, and I would always try to tell myself, my kids are not my soldiers. I'm not going to treat them like, but
my wife's not a soldier.
Yeah, exactly. But if something wasn't done to standard, I would freak out, And so now my twins.
Here's the beauty before you get to your twins is that you've established the respect between you and your children, right? Because they ask you, are you busy? Right. That's the respect that you've established through the family. And that's the most important thing a lot of times is creating the respect for each other, knowing that your schedule and your being busy is important, and knowing that they're realizing, okay, I need to touch base, say, hey, are you busy, Dad? And then they understand now, like you said, right? But you're twins.
Oh yeah, so they have retired contractor dad now, so it's a different type of dad. I'm a little bit less stressed in my life. I have different stressors than I did back, when I was a military guy. But so I dad a little bit different now. So sometimes my older daughter will, kind of give me some, well, really, Dad, like, they have it so easy. And, every time we went out to dinner, we'd be like, oh, Dad, what, can I? Is this in the budget, Dad, or is this, is this okay if I order this? And. She's like, my brother and sister never get that treatment. She feels like they get whatever they want.
Be like, look, you're in the military now. You're gonna find out. Exactly. You're gonna find
out. Exactly.
So. Keep.
Yeah.
You're from that.
Yeah. It's definitely a different dad vibe, but I'm still the same when it comes to a lot of things that I'll always do for all my kids. Just for one, be that protector, provide that protection, and not just physically, like being the protector of your home, but just protecting their hearts, protecting their minds as much as possible. You can't shield them and from everything, but you can try to put them in positive places or try to guide them to surround themselves with positive people.
Because that's our main goal too. A lot of times is preparing, right? That's the whole purpose of the Ignited 42 podcast, is to prepare folks, because like you said, we can't protect everyone, right? Because naturally, as fathers, that's one of our biggest roles, is to protect the family. Right. And like you said, right, maintaining the promises that you keep. And that's the tough part, right? Because of our lives always different. But when we commit to those things, right, we use those words and we hold to those words, because now we're not going to have empty promises, right? Because those empty promises to our children are devastating.
Right. Oh, big time.
Right. Yeah. And because they'll remember those. They'll forget about all the other many things that you've done. But that one time. Right. That you made a promise and it literally just never came to fruition. But when you hold the promise and it has to be delayed, they understand the delay, but you still close out that promise. Yeah. They're like, took a little bit. It's something like we talk about on a regular basis, right? We send up blessings and prayers, and it's like, I prayed yesterday, it still hasn't happened. But
patience.
The Lord Father's like, no, this is my time. And that's one of those things that, based on what you've discussed and how all of us are, is that we tell our children, it's like, we will get it done, and we hold that promise. Right. And sometimes they're impatient, but when it's done, they forgot that it took, 2 days, 3 days, or sometimes a month, because like we talked about being service members and you're standing up a business, it's not there, right? Financially wise. And now that we have Dad Olympics and creating that atmosphere of family center, fatherhood, having the time to be children, to act foolish, right? I mean, that's the most important part, because trust me, us as we get older, we look at events with our children or our grandchildren, we're going, oh, that's going to leave a mark later on tomorrow. But guess what? I'm going to have fun, right? But, it's just one of those things coming out of Ephesians, right? 6, it talks about don't let anyone, don't be deceived by empty words. And that's one of those critical things that we as fathers, when we say that promise, we got to hold that and not have it be empty. Because the Lord has given us promises throughout his scripture. And he's always held his promises to us, right? So other than that,
Well, I think that's good. You said two things that I think is, to give encouragement to dads, right? Like, one of the promises, hey, they just don't promise. Yeah. Like my parents, my boys will be like, do you promise? No, I don't. No, I don't. Yeah. And then other times, like, do you promise? And like, yes, I do. And then they know, like,
it's solid.
It's solid. Okay. Like, dad's going to make sure he does everything that he can in his power to make it happen. So that's one, is like, hey, just don't say things to just say things. Don't let it be empty words. And then two, like, even work-life balance, right? Like, balance isn't the key, in my opinion, right? It's not the key. I think that balance is like, I've said it 1,000 times on the podcast. Like, how do you know your tires need to be balanced? Because they're out of balance, right? So then you need to balance them. So like that whole balance is when your family's like, hey, over here, do you forget? Like, oh, okay. Like, so that's when it's like, okay, now I need to adjust it. So like the balance portion of things is to knowing what do I need to adjust? When do I need to adjust? Like, hey, you know what? There's times where it's like, hey, I was here, dude, I got here at like what time? 3 o'clock, right? Because we had all this other stuff that we need to do. So it's like, hey, I needed to be fully focused on my family when I'm home because I'm going to be gone for the rest of the day. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's how I got to try to balance it and knowing. Right. But if I'm just going and doing everything that I want to do, or even that's required of me to do, guess what? Then it's going to become unbalanced. And it's just like,
prioritization. Got to prioritize what's important in life, what's going to be there at the end of the days, right? Because sometimes, like we all know, we can get replaced anytime in our profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Quickness. Literally, we can end up in a hospital for 3 months. Someone's already, we've been replaced. Yeah. Right. And who's there? No. Family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right. And so
that's a good point.
Right. Prioritizing life is important. And like you said, like balance, right? Or priorities. It all how you want to look at it in life. And if you prioritize family and you make your schedule around that, guess what? You're going to be balanced all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I tell everybody that, when it comes to jobs, whether military jobs or non-military jobs, your job will be posted tomorrow, the day after you die, the day after you leave. They will hire somebody else, and that machine keeps turning, with or without you. Yes, people will miss you and say, oh, that was a good guy. He used to work here and did this and that. But that machine keeps moving, and they're on to the next person. But who was there? Where you say your family, the people that care about you, are the ones that have your back, that keep that, Yes, us as dads, we're kind of that glue to keep it together. But, sometimes we always need that, somebody to have our back when it comes to that, when we're the ones that are down,
Yeah.
So
oh, yeah, for sure.
It's definitely important.
For sure. And you know what, like one of the things too, I remember somebody saying like, somebody was rushing out and they were going to go try to go to their kid's soccer game. And there was somebody that was trying to make an appointment to go and see them. And the individual like went out the back door and they're like, hey, they said that you weren't here. And he's like, well, because I'm leaving. They're like, no, I need to talk to you. And they're like, look, I got to go to my son's soccer game. They're like, his soccer game is more important than the stuff that's going on in my life right now. It was a pastor. Right. And he's like, yeah, because guess what? Anybody over here can counsel you. Not anybody can be at my kid's soccer game. Right. Like, I got to go. And it's like, I have to, like, we as dads have to make those priorities because it does mean the world to us, to our kids, because like you said, right? Like, you're going to get replaced at work. Man, and there's so many times like my wife has been like, you fought so hard to keep these people and try to like fight for, other people. And my family was the one that ended up suffering for it. Right. You know what I mean? It's
I can feel that all the way. I come from a long history in like restaurant work, and restaurant work is always demanding, especially if you're part of the leadership team in a restaurant. Oh. And just like you're saying, like that one guy coming up to you at the end of the day, like, you got to fix this, or you got to fix this, or you got to fix that. So many times I was just like wasting my life away at work and not taking the time to be like, nope, I'm done. See you guys later. Even right down to the point of like, I kind of want to go back to what you were saying about balancing a tire, and another key aspect of like, you go get your tires rotated and balanced because they're out of balance. Yep. But the signs that you're watching for is your car starts to pull one way or the other. Yep. And you watch that, if you're watching that at work and you're pulling more towards work instead of at home and stuff like that, then you're starting to realize that you're going out of balance. Or when you get home, you start seeing that wear and tear on the outside of the tire, and it's wearing and tearing on your family. That's when you got to be like, hey, we got to pause for a weekend. We got to stop and we got to breathe and we got to catch up with each other.
Yeah.
I think that when you're dealing with kids and you're dealing with raising a family, Will is actually a great representation. Because for those of you that don't know, Will lives next door. I think we covered this the last time I was on here. But when Will gets home, my son is waiting outside and wants to have a forever long conversation with Will. It's like his favorite person. It's his best friend. He thinks you guys are exactly
We
the
have
same.
great discussions. Trust me.
But just seeing how he's outgoing and stuff like that, I'm also a firm believer of like, bring your kids with you. Let them understand what you're going through. If you're working in a trade industry or you're working in an area where it's like not the end of the world to bring your kid with you to work kind of a thing, then bring them with you. Let them see what dad's going through. Let them see. My son's favorite thing to do is help me load chairs in the truck to go take to a party. He feels included. It gives him a sense of work ethic. It gives him an understanding of like, hey, here's what we're trying to do. Even at the events, he's running around. I mean, you've seen him at plenty of events, running around making sure all the kids are happy, but
Because he sees that's what you're doing for everybody else, dude.
Yeah.
But I think it's important, because the more time you get to spend around your kids, the more of an example you get to set for them.
Well, that's where it's been lost. Like, think about it. Like before, the Industrial Revolution, what was going on? Dads were at home and they were taking care of the land. You know what I mean? And then once the Industrial Revolution hit, then guess what? They took all the men out of the homes and put them into the work environment. And then the school was responsible for raising the kids. The mom was responsible for raising the kids. Whereas before, the dads were working along side by side with their kids. Hey, get up. We need to go work this land. Like, it doesn't matter what's going on. Like, we need to go and do it. So, like, the kids had the opportunity to see the work ethic that dad had, the push that he had, and guess what? Him being a dad, him being a husband, being there for the wife, you know what I mean? And they got to see that. That's lost. You know what I mean? And like, fortunately for me, and like, my family has a bread distributorship, and so my boys get on that truck with me, and it's like, hey, you know what? You're gonna work with me. And the greatest conversations that I have had and have had the opportunity with my boys is because they've gone to work with me. It's like what was Zach from Sierra Vista Plumbing? He was just saying that 3 generations of them having this business, and he has his kids there with him, and he was doing the same thing with his dad.
His kid was asleep in the truck.
Yeah. And to go further about the Industrial Revolution is now stretch it out during the World Wars.
Oh yeah,
husbands were taken out to war. The women filled the factories.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Right. So now definitely the school and a babysitter was raising the children.
Somebody else
so
was.
the element of family nucleus was totally destroyed. Is it a good thing? Of the technology moving forward, sure, but it also cost the families of how things work
Look
today.
at it now too. I mean, how many families are moms working, dad's working? Generally one of those two people is probably working 2 jobs just to keep by. And the only ones suffering are the kids. And then you go and you send them to school and you send them to a babysitter. And now you have to worry about the influences that they're getting.
Big time.
And then, there's not a safe place to really allow them to consume media or like video and stuff like that. My son he ends up on YouTube all day, or he's watching cartoons on TV, and you want to monitor that stuff too, because that's an invasion of your household and your beliefs.
Because they're pushing an agenda, dude.
Yeah,
they're pushing that agenda.
Correct. Yeah, if you're not guiding that agenda to better your children, then we're missing the boat, right? I mean, I'm not going to apologize, but Ephesians 5:8, right? For you were once in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, finding what is acceptable in the Lord. So as we walk through those things, those are the righteous things, and we'll walk into the light by demonstrating to our children what it looks like, right? Because they're watching us how to be an adult.
Yeah.
We talked about this in the last podcast, is that we have children watching how to be an adult. I mean, you have grown children during the Marine Corps. They followed your footsteps of being a service member, understanding that they're taking a responsibility that's bigger than themselves. And that's a tough thing to do, especially serving and being a service member and being a veteran going, ooh, that's a tough bite, because the way society is right now, that if you're a service member, sometimes you're not smart enough. No. I'm educated,
Right.
but not the way you think I am.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I know I may not have a PhD in electronics or bioscience, but guess what? When it's time to make it happen, like we talked about earlier when you came in, we do the maintenance in this building, right? All of us do in some form or some fashions. We break it down, we do it because that's what we were taught, is doing those basic things of being able to fix something when it needs to before we make the phone call. We try to get to the point that doesn't cost us thousands of dollars. We're like, okay, that's beyond my expertise. Let me make a phone call to Zach. Zach, I got some issues with my HVAC, because if I do it, it's going to cost me millions of dollars, right? It's one of those things. And as long as we continue doing that and showing them that we are the light and we can guide them in the righteous way of the Lord, then it's going to be acceptable. Will they see that being acceptable in today's society? No. Because they'll get influenced with the social media. It's like, that's not what your dad is toxic. No. My dad is doing the best he can.
Right.
He's shown me what it takes to be a fatherhead or be responsible and be accountable. I don't like dad when he freaking makes me accountable for things, right? But what I learned, right, with my late father is that, hey, if I'm going to do a job, like you said, I'm going to do it right, just like what you showed your son and what Bobby shows his young men. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to show you how to do it right. And if you mess up, I'm not going to eat your lunch.
No.
Explain to me what you did so I could explain to you where you missed the point, right? Or what task you missed during those steps. You develop them to be better men or better women, however you want to put it.
Well, and who is here helping me fix that skylight?
Dad.
My pops.
Yeah.
It's like, still going on.
Right?
Dude, still, still one of those things.
I think getting back to that point too that Will was talking about, so many people want to shield their kids and shield them. I don't think it's necessarily about shielding them, because right now, we live in a very culturally violent place, and I think it's about preparing them.
There you go.
It's not that they don't see what's going on around them, but building men and women of character, getting them to understand, like, hey, I understand that that's how you live your life. I don't hate you for it.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
I just want you to understand how I live my life also. And that's okay. And when they see something that is a little off color and off putting or whatever, that they're not like in disdain because of it.
Yeah. Or offended.
Yeah, or offended. They're just like, hey, if I walk into an art studio, I'll see the abstract art, right? And then I'll see some like Roman nudity on the wall, right? Just because the abstract art is there and then the Roman nudity's over here doesn't mean that it's a rated X art studio. That's just the world we live in, where you got to learn to allow them to see things that don't quite fit into place where they are, but to have an understanding so that they're equipped.
Yeah.
And don't fall due to like the peer pressure. I don't even know if it's peer pressure anymore. I think that's a lot bigger.
It's like social pressure as a whole, right? So it is peer pressure, but social pressure, because then, like you said, they're on social media, they're on all this other stuff. So it's like
more systematic.
Well, yeah. And so it's like, hey, if everybody's going in this direction, well, then I guess I got to fit in over here. You know what I mean? So it's important, like what you're saying, it's important to have those conversations. Hey, we don't, hey, you're in that art room. Hey, we don't go down that. Right. But here's the thing. You need to have the discipline to not like, because they're watching. Like, hey, my boys are watching. And so when we're driving down the street and there's some chick that's in like inappropriate things, like, girl, why are you wearing that right now? It's like, don't look. Like, my eyes are fixed on the road because I can feel my boys like, what is dad going to do? Like, I'm not looking, you know what I mean? And it's like having that discipline and that integrity. And that's like, that's what we're supposed to do, because we're showing what's acceptable. And like you said, right? Like, hey, if my kids don't see me, lie on certain things, like, hey, somebody's coming over to the house, like, oh, well, don't tell them I'm here. Like, believe it or not, you're instilling that it's okay to lie on certain things. So if your kid lies to you, like, where did they get that from?
All right, yeah, we got to build resiliency in our children, men and women, young men and women, and with that Olympics, that's the beautiful part about it, is seeing, grown men, fathers to commit to an event, to say, hey, guess what, son, daughter, we're going to do this. I promise, because we're going to have a good time.
Yeah.
like I said, later on, it's going to hurt a little bit because I can't do certain things like that. But it's that building block of building resiliency and seeing their father take that wall down to have fun, right? To laugh. Right. Because if we don't build our children, like you said, and prepare them and having resiliency, then every single thing in life becomes an offense to them. Oh, they don't like me because my hair was blue. Why is your hair blue? Because you wanted it to be blue. Okay, then. Who cares what they think, right? It's building those things of figuring out what's important, right? Prioritizing our life, right?
Prioritizing.
Yes, that word. Our family. And if we as fathers show that, because like you said, they're watching, and every misstep, they take account for it, even when we don't realize it, but they do take account for it. And then all of a sudden they get to a certain age. Hey, Dad, remember such and such or such a date? Nope. I barely remember what I had for breakfast the other day. And it's like, no. And then all of a sudden they give a detailed account of that event and you're going, wow. Oh, you just...
Those little things.
Those little things.
I got a question, dude. So Dad Olympics, there's obviously not everybody wins the event. So how does that go? Because there's... like you can tell a lot about an individual when they lose, and by the way they win. Like I always tell my boys, like when we're doing certain things, let's just watching things. Like look at how they win. You know what I mean? Like hey, they're a jerk. You know what I mean? When they win, and so like when my boys used to do jiu-jitsu, like I was always like, hey, win or lose, whatever. Like hey, you know what? I want you to win. Like we came here for you to freaking win. Like but hey, it's up to you in the mats. So whatever the result is, that's it. But you need to accept, hey, if you won, you busted your butt for that. Be proud of yourself, but you know what? Show the character. You know?
So I like to think that when you are competing in the Dad Olympics, like everybody's winning. It's fun. There's so many things that we're giving out, so many different prizes throughout the day. Even just right down to it, I mean, we're blessed to have like 223 Barbershop and Executive Barber Club coming out, and they're kicking off the first ever Southern Arizona's Battle of the Barbers or Barber Off. And we're looking at bringing down some cool people. I mean, you're going to be one of our judges. And even if it's just as simple as like, Dad has been feeling a little scruff. Well, here's a barber who's going to trim you up. But they're not even just going to trim you up. They're like competing. They want to give you the highest quality haircut you could have gotten. Whether it's out there bonding with your kids. I mean, if you feel like you lost after having an entire day of hanging out with your kids, then you need to have more days with your kids.
Yeah. You have a bigger problem.
You know? And I haven't had an issue with Dad Olympics where they're like, oh, dang, I didn't win. You know, whether we're doing a dad bod show and giving out silly prizes or whatever. The games are all designed to be goofy. The games are actually designed to have handicaps. You know, if you have a 3-year-old kid, they're not going to be able to throw a frisbee 60 yards, you know? So Dad's going to have to make up more space, you know? But if you got a 15-year-old kid, it might be a little bit different.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But if your kid is 15, he might not go find all the 10-millimeter sockets we have hidden around the park for the younger kids, you know?
And those are hurt by those 10 millimeters. Man, those are hard to come by.
Those are great games. So what we really try to do is it's more about humility, and it's more about just breaking it down and making you do something that is out of sorts, and something that's goofy and based upon your kids, and you're going to enjoy it because you're going to be out there laughing, and you're going to see, you know, everybody thinks it's like, oh, look at that guy, he's doing this silly task over here, right? No, but you're all doing it.
Yeah.
So now everybody's just kind of like, did you see how he did that one? Like, are you kidding me? So I think that's more what it's supposed to be about. Is that's like cool. break it back and have fun with the event. You know, we've got different aspects to it. From like we'll be having a live band come out this year. We've got a DJ coming out to run the day for us. We've got the barbers happening. We're gonna have some basketball challenges. We're gonna have some challenges on the football field. We're gonna have some challenges on the tennis courts. So. And it's not all athletic challenges. We like to call them like semi-athletic challenges. And then we're also going to have fun because we're going to play Battleship. You remember Battleship, the game?
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
Right? We're going to play it. We're going to divide the dads between A team and B team. And a background point booster game is after they compete in each challenge, they'll go back to Rage Quit Games and go shoot a missile and try to hit somebody else's ship.
Nice.
So it'll be a large format version of it. And I mean, you were there at the first one.
Yeah.
What are some things that you remember from the first one? I think you were there at the second one too.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite things that you've seen? Because that is really what it is. It's just get goofy, have fun.
My favorite thing about both years is just seeing the kids out there with their dads, their father figure. Because some of them were like, "This is my stepdad. This is my mom's boyfriend. Whoever that's raising me." All those people were there, and I love seeing that they had those. You know, they chose them. You know, this is my father figure this is my person that is going to be in the Dad Olympics with me. So I know it made that more special to that person, to that dad who was there with their family and those kids. So I love just watching them just have fun, you know, and it's competitive for sure. Anything you do is competitive, and it's important to teach our kids. You know, yes, I feel that winning does matter. You want your kids to win, but they got to know they're not always going to win. Yeah. So what do you do? Like you said, what happens? And I've seen my kids, you know, because they, you know, being national level cheerleading and soccer, traveling and seeing these big tournaments and from competing against people from all different states. We've seen some horrible examples of what not to do. And what frustrates me the most is some of these. A lot of times I've seen it. It's the dad is the coach and the son is on the team, and I'm like, oh, dude, you are setting the worst example for your kid. Yeah. You know, and it just kind of the whole team kind of gets that whole vibe, and they all start acting like that. And I've always told my kids, look, let your skills speak for themselves. Don't run your mouth. Let your skills speak for themselves. That's what's important. Those other kids out there, they're going to do that. I mean, I've seen, you know, this is 2024. We're out there and there's still little kids, other teams yelling racist comments out there. You know, it blows my mind, you know, that we're still that way as a society. But, and I tell my kids, just don't get involved. You know, don't let it frustrate you. That's what they're trying to get at you. That's their mechanism. They're losing, and you know, or they're trying to just put you down in the dirt. Let your skills speak for themselves, because that's all that's going to matter. If you want to take it to the next level, that's what recruiters are going to look for. That's what colleges look for. Yep. Your skill. They don't want to hear you running your mouth. They don't want to see you doing crazy stuff on social media. You know,
and that'll actually work against you.
Yes, it will. Yeah, that's why a lot of coaches now are totally against it. They make them, hey, delete your social media. You know, it's nothing good comes from it when it comes to people on sports, and little things get caught up in that way. But it's important, you know, that they learn. It's some tough lessons, and I hate seeing my kids lose. I hate seeing the heartbreak, but it's part of life. Yeah, and it really builds them, helps build that character. And I love, you know, I'm there. I can be there when they have those moments if they want it, because a lot of times, especially with my daughter, she wants nothing to do with me. And she's in one of those moments. Yes, Dad, go away. Okay, I'm here. If you need me, I'm over here. You know, I'll be at the snack shack. I'll be in the back. Whatever. You let me know, and we'll talk about it. You know,
we'll get some ice cream.
Yes, you know, when you're ready, we will have the conversation. But I'm just letting them know that, hey, Dad's here. Yeah. You know, whenever you're ready to talk, whenever you're ready, if you need whatever you need on your journey to help you get past this, I'm here. I'm not going to be in your face and tell you need to do this or you should have done that. That's not. I don't do that. I don't dad that way. So, but I think it's definitely important to, you know, kind of show them what we think right looks like when it comes to winning and losing. And you should always want to win, you know, because if not, then why are we there? Why am I wasting our time? You know.
Well, I think like we've been talking about, right? One of the themes is prepare, right? Prepare. As dads, that's what our responsibility is. Yeah, protect and provide and everything, but prepare. Mm-hmm. You know.
Oh yeah, life lessons are. Oh man, those are super important to me. You know, and I anything around the house, little things. If a faucet breaks or whatever, I give my son, hey, come here. Mm-hmm. Guess what we're doing today? You know, we're gonna go to Ace Hardware, and you're gonna help me do this, because you're gonna learn. You're gonna learn how to, you know, fix a toilet seat, replace a faucet, you know, indoor, outside, whatever. Put the dog door in, just things like that. You know, obviously there's chores that our kids do around the house, but life lessons, flat tires. You know, that's my kid. My kids are driving now, so little things like that. You know, hey Dad, I get those phone calls. You know, hey Dad, and I can tell by, you know, the tone of their voice, it's going to be like, okay, it's either going to be expensive or, you know, something. Hey Dad, all right, what happened? Well, I hit a curb. Okay, all right, are you okay? First question, you okay? Yep. How bad is it? You know, how bad's the vehicle? You know, whatever. I'm fine. I'm at a gas station. Okay, you're at a safe space. Good. I'm at work. You know, or I just sat down dinner or whatever. But I've taught you how to do it. Work it out, and I will be there as soon as possible. And I'll check and make sure you're good. You know, so things like that. You know, let them start it off. I'll show up. Okay, where are we at in the process? You know, I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to walk you through it and make sure, because next time you could be in some dark highway somewhere. Yeah. You know, you got to prepare, like you said, be ready for the worst. You know, luckily, these past few times have been, you know, things in the city here in the city limits. There have been, you know, areas that are well lit like gas stations, you know, but as us, as men, we know it's not always going to be that way.
There's some dark areas.
You're not going to have signals, just things like that we're so dependent on. What happens if you don't have any of those things? What are you going to do?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I remember one time at one of the churches that we used to attend, a young man had a flat tire. He didn't know how to change the tire. Right. Young women were there. One of them knew how to change a tire. I'm like, no, you go stand. Let me show this young man how to do it. Right. And we like you said, I'll break the first bolt.
Yeah.
The rest is on you, and I'll walk you through it, right? To see that young man have confidence, and then all of a sudden see those young women also have confidence in him, learning something to do something that's simple as changing a tire, right? Because it's like, bro, you don't want her to change a tire because I'll be embarrassed for you, right? But because of how her father taught her how to do those basic things, he wasn't taught. So, I can't fault his father or his parents for it, just the way the technology is, right? Going back to coaching, right? I coached many years ago, right? And most of us were believers. And so we did play, our team were runs, literally. I mean, our biggest guy or smallest guy was his son's size, right? Colin's size.
And the rest my size. What a little guy.
Yeah, well, we had a guy that they were from 9 to 13 is how we coached them. We stayed with them the whole time before they got into high school, and they were runs. And we played against a team that, because of the way their coaches were and their parents were, those young kids at 9, 10 years old were cussing our kids out. We're like, come here, time out. Brought our kids in. It's like, don't let them. They're poking the bear. And the reason why, and they were winning. They were handed it to us.
Right.
But having that discussion with those young men turned their mindset completely around, their perspective. All of a sudden, at the end of the day, end of the game, we actually came out on top because of the tenacity that these kids had, the resiliency that we built, and the encouragement. It's like, look, do your position, allow your skills to set the standard. And we had a great photographer on staff. And bro, when you looked at photos of tackling, you count at a minimum 9 helmets coming to the ball. And I'm going, dude, how many people we had on the field? We only had 11, right? It's like, yeah, are you sure? Because I'm counting 9 heads going to this ball. It's building that and encouraging. It's like, let your skills speak for themselves. Let who you are speak for yourself, regardless of what society says. Let your skills and who you are speak loudly, because if you don't speak who you are in a bold way, you've already lost, right? Just like that Olympics, right? Showing up is the best thing ever. Because like you said, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's uncle, stepfather, grandfather, great-grandfather, it's a man in their lives that's representing them to have a good time. And just showing up is literally 75% of it all.
Well, and do it with confidence too.
Yeah, well, sometimes you got to be timid, right? Because sometimes it's like, my child, whether it's my grandson or my son's son, ain't very skilled. So I have to sometimes, be humble enough to go, you know what, I'm going to let my son or my daughter win this event for our team, right? Because that's one of the humbleness in building the encouragement and confidence and saying, you could do this because I believe in you, right? Because when we do those things, our kids all of a sudden, it's like, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to try to jump from the top of this building to that roof. Hold on. Let me make a phone call first, right? 911, ready? Go ahead, go. 911, yeah, my son just jumped off the building. I think he broke something. How do you do that? Well, because I gave him the confidence in himself to try.
That's funny.
All right?
That's funny.
Sometimes you need a cast to fix that.
Oh, yeah. You gotta let. Yeah, sometimes it's not a good idea to just have the dads. That's when moms are like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Hold on, I got this. No.
So for parents with younger kids, right? Like you were talking about changing tires and doing stuff like that. I mean, I can vouch for it. My son is constantly on me, whether it's if we're changing a tire or fixing at the sink or changing the doorknobs in the house or whatever. And when they're younger, it's kind of difficult to work with them. You got to have a different level of patience, but don't be scared to have that level of patience.
For sure.
Obviously, sometimes just as dads, we're like, I could have been done already.
Yeah.
Could have been done already. And sometimes I find that part of it getting the best of me in raising my son, where it's just like, no, just stop, go away. But then it is really valuable to work with your kids in the house, out of the house, whether it's fun playtime work, but that there's stuff you're constantly doing that gives them some sort of other preparedness, you know, whether it's going on a hike, that's work, you know, going out in the middle of nowhere and being like, hey, you got to watch for these snakes and there's bears in our mountains. And, you know, there's a lot of dangers out here that we got to pay attention to. So even though we're just walking, we still have to be aware of our surroundings and understand that and be prepared in those ways, you know, but
the important thing is being with them
and taking the time.
And being with me, you know, like when I remember somebody saying, you know, going back and bring this scripture wise, right? It was like Jesus was with them, you know what I mean? And it's like, hey, you know what? Like that's the perfect picture of, you know, what was he doing? He was making disciples. Well, what are we doing with our kids? We're bringing them up. We're discipling our kids to be capable of doing things when we're not around. The only way they're going to learn is that they're with us,
Right?
You know.
Yeah.
So
And that's important, right? I mean, because if we don't do those things, right, and show that love, right? What's that? 1 Corinthians 4, right? I think it is. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It's not puffed up. Does not behave rudely. Does not seek its own. It is not provoked. Thinks no evil. Does not rejoice in evil, I guess you could say, but rejoices in truth, right? So looking in that piece and understanding love to our children and showing that love and showing the frailty of a man, because sometimes our children don't get to see that in those private moments, that sometimes we are actually more fragile than they are, right? Because sometimes we've seen our kids hurt and we have to be puffed up and walk through them, how to get through there, even though it's devastating to us.
It's terrifying.
Yes, right. And or you know, looking at, you know, I mean, your daughter's a Marine, you know, proud.
Oh yeah.
But there's a fear factor of if we kick off, right?
Yeah.
If the U.S. kicks off into something, that service member, your daughter, can be boots on ground on sea.
Oh yeah.
Right. And seeing that trauma that will come.
Oh yeah.
Right. And preparing them like you've done is like, hey, the world is not all bells and whistles unless you make it flowers and balloons, which we can because we love one each other. The biggest thing that we do in ensuring in our men's Bible study is we tell each man that we love them. Right. Because that's one of those things that we don't do to each other, say, hey, you know what? I love you.
Yeah.
Right. And folks go, ooh, that's creepy. And that's kind of, or they'll say, oh, that's homophobic or whatever. It's like, no, bro. When we tell you that we love you is because we love you because Christ loved us first.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the most important thing. If we don't love each other, no matter what's going on, because I'm going to love you as a man because of the fact that you're still here.
Yeah.
You're still in the fight. You're still showing your children how to make it in life.
Yeah. I think that's what's important too with what you're doing, dude. Because, it's good that you have dads with their kids. But I think even more so is that dads can see other dads and bond together. Because that's what we see in our men's group. Like,
I think so one aspect of it is like it's not what I'm doing. It's just coming up with a decent enough idea and getting it to play in action.
Sure.
Because it's them doing it.
Yeah.
They're the ones bonding. They're the ones taking that and
But you've created that environment, dude.
Yeah.
Like nobody was doing it beforehand. You know what I mean? It's the same thing here. Like, hey, dude, when we have our men's group here at the church, like I don't even lead one of the small groups. Like we pass that on to the other guys because we're trying to build leaders. But guess what? Like we were meeting in my garage, like because we know how important it is. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're not doing it, but you have made an opportunity and facilitate something for people to be able to. Because guess what? If you don't do Dad Olympics next year,
people are gonna miss it.
who's going to do it? Exactly. But
They're
guess
gonna
what?
miss it,
But guess what? Chances are it won't happen.
Get done. Right?
Yeah, you know what I mean. So
Yeah. In today's society, when they say we need a safe place, well, when we talk about a safe place, we mean it in a biblical sense, right? Because here, like you said, the group of men, we share things that is truly a safe place where we could take off that mask that we've been wearing all those days and those weeks and those years. And with that Olympics, it's a safe place for a man to be childlike with their children, right?
I think
it's an
that's
environment to have fun and be like a child where there's like, oh, son, I need you to aim just a little bit like this. You know, but they become a little more tactical. It's like, I need you to change the angle, and then you got it. But then all of a sudden, it's like they miss. It's like, and they cheer even with a miss because they were able to bond and they tried together to make something successful. And that's truly a safe place to watch men take that guard down to have fun.
Oh, and they still have their guards.
Of course.
Sometimes it usually takes about halfway through the event before I think that some of the guys are like finally broke off that kind of like
got rid of that pride and that ego.
Yeah, and they're like, you know what, I'm gonna do this because it's fun. You know, some of the games are just super silly. When we're playing the minute to win it rounds, I mean, you do some goofy stuff in those moments. I mean, we're even trying to figure out, no promises this year, but we're trying to figure out how to do either a contest on building a snow dad or do a full-on snowball fight in the middle of June in Sierra Vista when it's going to be 100 degrees outside. That sounds pretty good to me.
Let's figure it out.
You got to be careful with some of those little ones. You're like, let me pack. I'm going to take this guy out.
Yeah.
What do you got in that? Nothing bad. Why is that so brown?
That's so hard.
But I think just doing stuff that is out of the ordinary, and I think that's important even when it comes to parenting, right? Is if you want to fall in line and like if you're watching this and you're like, man, I love the way that Mark talks about raising his kids and that it's just here to have a story for you guys, it's just here to give you some context. People are going to raise their kids how they want to raise their kids, but be creative as you're doing it. Like, don't be that cookie cutter dad. Like, I mean, I call them all like white picket fence dads. Everybody seems to think everything was perfect for them. But by the time you walk through that front door, you sit down on their couch for 2 hours, you start realizing there's a lot more going on, supporting those dads and things, I mean, I can attest to the fact that I've been so insanely stressed out over something my son is doing or my daughter. I dropped her on the ground the other day and it messed me up. I mean, it's hard to hold a 2-year-old, man. So luckily they're still made of rubber. But even just in different discussions with my wife, where our discussions may become borderline arguments or we may find ourselves frustrated with each other, but it's never because we're like breaking. It's more because we want to see the best in both of each other, And so when we see something that doesn't shine to be the best part of one of us and we say something, it's like, hey, how does that work? And I'm not ashamed to let my kids watch that either. Yeah. Like, have that process of understanding that, like, hey, me and your mom are in a relationship. Okay? And we're not always going to see eye to eye, but we do want the best for each other. So as we're doing that, kind of learning and doing that, but also remember, your kids are watching. They're always watching. Even with conversations with grown-ups. I mean, growing up, I remember hearing my friends' parents and even I think my parents, so they're like, leave the room, grown-ups are talking. I'm like, if you never allow your kid to listen to a grown-up conversation, how are they going to learn how to communicate with adults? So...
Yeah, and if there's something that needs to not be said, then obviously use good discernment. You know what I mean? To say it. But yeah, like I agree. Like, dude, my boys are here during men's group. They've heard all kinds of stuff. You know what I mean? And they're so grateful too, because it's like they hear other guys that are just being transparent about things that they've gone through, and they're like, "Dang, Dad, like you've been telling us all these years." You know what I mean? And they're like, and now we're hearing other men say the same thing, like avoid this or don't do that, or hey, you know what, like. It's just a part of life, huh? And like, yeah, dude. You have the opportunity to choose.
Correct. And the big thing, like you said, we don't try to protect them. We try to prepare them, even though we will protect them. What we try to make sure is they don't see the ugliness in a relationship, right? Because the ugliness in relationships is like you talked about, Mark, earlier. It's like you don't want to have a blown out conversation to the point that it's literally ugly conversation,
right?
Name calling and accusations and all this other stuff and da-da-da-da-da. That's what you try to protect your children from, right? And that's important because that leaves an imprint And they sometimes think that's how a relationship is supposed to work. When actually, no, it's not supposed to work like that. It's supposed to have those moments like, hey, and then sometimes if they don't understand, you take the time, right? Having that patience, like, here's the discussion that you heard. Here's what we were having a discussion or argument, what you perceive to be an argument. We're looking for the best option possible to make sure that we are better for each other and better for you. And that's a tough billet. I mean, that's a piece that we all learn most of the time the hard way.
Right. Yeah.
And realizing, man, I love my mom and dad, but man, sitting there watching some of the ugliness of arguments, and then you make that vow, it's like, I'm never going to be that way. And then all of a sudden you actually are in it, right? And you're just like, oh man, I'm just like my parents, right? And then now you start readjusting and say, okay, now we'll have a discussion, not an argument that's pushing that way, maybe because of our tones have gone up or our demeanors change, our postures change because we become defensive. Then we realize, like, okay, I'm getting defensive here.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, I'm pretty sure we've all been guilty of having those ugly conversations, even with the kids around. And you honestly try not to have them. But like when an ugly conversation comes up in your relationship, 9 times out of 10, it's happening one way or the other. Like it's like a time bomb that just blew up. Yep. And, I guess and I found myself guilty of it, so I'm not like going to sugarcoat, At the same time, understanding like, hey, you know what? That's not how we're going to do stuff. And taking that moment, learning from it and growing from it. And even if that means that you have to have a harder conversation with your kid to be like, hey, you know what? I messed up, or this and that, and making sure that they understand, like, hey, you know what? That's not a behavior that we should do. Like, Dad had a moment of just incoherency, I guess. Or
that's a good point, man. Because like, if you can go back, like even during those times, right? You have those hard conversations. Dude, me and my wife had that time. We went through a horrible season, and during those times, like even her and I, within like arguing, we would, the kids were there and we're like, hey, look, we're sorry. Like we're just like, this is just a very hard season. You know what I mean? Right. But they saw us like fighting for, like, although we were fighting against one another, but they also saw that we were fighting for our marriage. Right. 1, 2, hey, apologizing. Like, hey, you know what? I need to apologize to all you guys. Cause like, you know what? I should, tell my wife, like I should have never had said that. Hey, you know what? You guys should never think that that's acceptable for me to say that to your mom, or for you to think that it's okay that you can say that to anybody. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then apologizing, or, hey, you know what? Going into them and saying, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I snapped at you. I shouldn't have snapped at you over this situation. You know what I mean? Because then you're also making it okay for you to recognize those things. And then they're saying, hey, you know what? If dad can apologize to me, then I can apologize. Yeah. But if they never see you apologize, guess what?
We're not perfect.
They're not going to do it either.
They're not going to do it.
I think it's good we go back and check on our kids and just go over and do like an AAR, if you will, with them. Talking to my kids, 5 years after I got divorced, there's, they were still holding on to some stuff. We had to have a conversation between them and my ex, and we all sat down. I'm like, look, you guys are holding on to some stuff. I need you to we're just going to sit here and it's going to be raw, and we're just going to talk it out. It was kind of, me and her have been divorced for about 5 years at this point, and they in their mind, they had remembered things that didn't happen. But in their younger minds, that's what happened. Yeah. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm glad that we figured this out now, because if not, 10, 15, 20 years go by and you think this is what happened, and that's not what happened at all, So luckily we got that cleared up, and, I sat there with their mom. We talked it out. We were honest. Ask us whatever you want, and we're going to clear this up right now, because I'm not going to have you live your whole life thinking that something happened that didn't happen, because I see too much of that, where it's just, it's a hard conversation to have with your kids, especially the longer it goes, or the longer it festers, or whatever. You just don't want to talk about it, but sometimes it affects your kids in their adulthood and their relationships 100%. And their things like that. So I think it's important that you sit back and say, look, I just want to make sure, you guys don't think, something happened, didn't happen, or whatever it is. But just make sure that, hey, look, we can talk about it, just make sure that we're all clear on, on the same page. I think that helps.
Great, yep. Not to steal a line from a book that we're reading, but extreme ownership, right? Because you're the fatherhead.
Yeah.
Overall, no matter what happens, you can't blame anybody. Yeah. You're the fatherhead. it's your responsibility to clear things up. And sitting down during that moments, like I said, pushing 5 years being divorced and sitting down with your kids, you're taking an ownership and you're disarming that negative aspect of their view, taking it away. And now you actually have built a resiliency and you prepared them for situations like we talked about, right? Is preparing them. And that's the whole goal of Dad Olympics, is preparing these young children to be resilient, to have fun in life. Because as we grew up, what's the biggest thing that we were told was like, hey, forget part of your childhood. No, you need to remember your childhood and remember what your child is going through, because you actually went through some of those things yourself. Right. And now if you break that ice, all of a sudden, taking that ownership's like, yeah, I'm the one at fault. Yeah. And let's see how we can fix this so that I can make you better than I was, right?
For sure.
And I think that like, just like you were saying, like me growing up, I came from kind of a divided home and a lot of stuff like that, you know? And just like you said, your kids didn't remember it all the way in the correct way. And I think sometimes when I'm looking back on my history in my life, I'm like, man, I remember these things vividly, and other people in my family don't. Like, okay, sure. You know, so either you're suffering from amnesia or I am, but I can't be because I remember it. You know. But at the same time, some of those things, they're affecting us in our relationships. They're affecting us with how we're raising our kids. You know, being a little bit more self-aware and having conversations like we're having right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, are huge with your friends and your partners, and you know, just recognizing that, hey, you know, because those things that you remember that other people don't remember, whether or not that's exactly how it played out, they're probably more psychologically damaging to you
100%
than everything that is depicted in the full version of the truth.
Correct.
You know, I can remember about 50% of a movie after I watch it. You know?
It's a lot.
So, I'm a movie buff, though, so I like to think I have a good movie balance. But if you can't remember it, you know,
then you need to communicate it.
You might be expressing it.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know?
definitely.
So
Yeah, the biggest thing that we want to talk about too, right? Like Dad Olympics, June 15th, come out, bring your kids, have fun, be a child like with your children, whether you're a grandfather, great-grandfather, uncle, brother-in-law, whatever it is. Be proud. And the biggest thing that I will tell you, love never fails.
Yeah.
Right? And I challenge most of you men is to sit down and I ask you, when was the last time you held your child and said, I love you?
That's true.
And so if you can't remember that, well, I guess you better hold on to your child and say, you know what? I'm proud of you and I love you.
Yeah. Because you know what? When's the last time you heard that?
Exactly.
Right. That's true. Hey, real quick. So as we get ready to wrap up, what do you guys got to do? Is there registration? Can they just show up? Like, what's the deal?
So if they check out the Rocha Planning and Promotions page on Facebook, we'll be posting registration through there. I'll give you a copy of the link.
We'll link
too.
it all up on the bottom description of the podcast and the YouTube and everything else.
So you'll be able to find the registration link. It's only $35 to register to compete. Nice and easy. We would encourage you guys to come out and just have fun. I mean, that's the goal of the day, is to create bonding experiences. You know, this stuff, I mean, we'd love to make it for free for everybody, but it's just not really feasible. Plus, we want to make impact. You know, half of the money that we're raising is actually going to go to help the church version of this podcast, the United Fortitude Church, to help benefit stuff that's going on around you guys. I mean, you guys got so many programs that I'm learning about, and I feel like you guys are dropping new ones every week, and I'm like, geez.
Yeah, it's not us, man. We just try to listen to what the Lord tells us to make happen, and we're just
And
facilitators.
you know, so by joining us at Dad Olympics, you guys as a public and as a community, you're able to help us help impact more people.
That's cool.
So it's impact in every manner, whether it's with your kids, or whether it's your kids with you, or whether it's just impacting the community that surrounds you. Because the more we impact our community, the more positive outlets we have for our kids, and the more positive outlets we have for ourselves.
Yeah, and community is an important word. You know, here in Huachuca City, where this takes place, you know, you guys are believe it or not, I think a nice central hub from people coming in and out of our community. We have a lot of bad stuff that comes right here on 90. A lot of bad stuff comes in and out of the town. But the programs that you guys are doing here, a lot of great things for our community too. So it's a good thing to combat a lot of that bad stuff we have coming right on this highway right here. So I really appreciate you guys doing that and all these programs you have, and that you reach out to. And it's for anybody in the community. So I really appreciate that as well.
Man, thanks, man. Hey, well, so as we wrap up, Mark, do you mind praying us out?
Sure thing. Father, thank you for today, having this conversation, letting us men to get together and talk about our individual lives, goals, and hopefully we were able to reach other people out there as well that maybe have had some thoughts in their head or maybe some feelings and they're not sure how to express them or who to talk to or where to go. Just hopefully know, Father, that they're out there and they can reach out to anybody here in this room. There's a lot of people out there that want to help, and I hope they do so. And I hope everybody has a great upcoming Father's Day coming up. And, reach out to the ones you love and make sure, like we mentioned here, tell those people you love them and that you're proud of them.
In Jesus' name, amen.